Kevin McCullough.
Welcome back to That Kevin Show. Kevin McCullough, very glad to have you with us as we are in the throes of a new administration. And from the very get-go, from the moment that his hand came off the Bible, and I told you guys this for the last several months, there was going to be no grass growing under this administration's feet. They were going to make changes immediately. My good friend Brooks Singman broke on inauguration morning a big headline that said 200 executive orders. I was getting sourcing that was telling me that 2 weeks out from the administration, but it's been a rapid pace of signing things and getting things done. And here to break down some of what that looks like from a national defense perspective is the recently appointed chair of the National Security Center for the America First Policy Institute. We love AFPI, one of my favorite groups, and he is the former Undersecretary of Defense for the Trump administration in term one, and then he was part of the cabinet as Secretary of Veterans Affairs for the president in the first go-around. Robert Wilkie, welcome back. It's good to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you for having me.
You got
Exciting
it.
times.
You've got big shoes to fill at AFPI because General Kellogg is moving on to other things. And it is a time of transition, not just for the administration, but for everybody else. But I think the president kind of blew people away in his inauguration speech because it was a list of things that he had campaigned, some of them more tacitly, some of them more overtly. But these are all things that the American people wanted. And you happen to be, along with Secretary McMahon, you guys happen to be the ones writing up a lot of this policy. So what should the nation expect coming out of these executive orders? How is it going to change what the country looks like right here, from the get-go?
Well, let's go back to the beginning, Kevin. This campaign by the president has been what Ronald Reagan called a call to arms, to fundamentally transform the trajectory of our country, not just in terms of the federal government and its relationship to the states, but also in terms of the cultural assault that has been taking place now for decades, that in the past, and you've railed against this, Republicans have only paid lip service to in order to get through the coming election.
Right.
And what we will have in the immediate aftermath of the inauguration is a tidal wave of executive orders that have been worked on for the last 2 years. You mentioned my dear friend Linda McMahon. Through the America First Policy Institute, we have been working around the clock on transition plans for each of the federal departments and agencies. And that also entailed writing executive orders. I'll give you an example of the contrast. When President Trump came in the first time, we had less than 3, I think maybe 2 executive orders that he signed. He will sign upwards of 200 on Inauguration Day. And those will range from closing our borders to enhancing our national defense, to unleashing on the world American energy power that will tilt the balance, not just in Europe, but in the Middle East, because in my view, and having worked on it, the plan is not only to give the Europeans a lifeline and drive down prices across the board here in the United States, but also to bankrupt the gangster regime in Moscow and the theocratic fanatics in Tehran.
Right.
Quick example. When President Trump left the first time, the Iranians had $5 billion left. That was it. Joe Biden started transferring tens of billions of dollars to them to buy them off, and they were shipping out more oil under Joe Biden than they did when the Shah was alive in his last 5 years in power. That's
crazy.
The kind of faculty lounge lunacy that stops on January 20th.
And it's got to be an immediate pinch that they feel, because if you're getting money, pallets of cash, for lack of a better term, from the administration, and you're moving that much oil, you are raking it in. But the minute that our energy hits the market and the cash flow stops, what does happen there, Robert? I mean, you've been the Undersecretary of Defense. Iran is the major power broker of all the bad stuff that goes on in the Middle East at present. And it's very much in our personal self-interest, but also in the interest of our allies to make sure that they can't do that anymore.
And it sends a message to China. Look, Moscow and Tehran are the junior partners of this axis that has built up around the regime of Xi Jinping. I
Right.
mean, he considers himself the new Chairman Mao, but Chairman Mao with a world vision that Mao was not capable of carrying off. And you weaken Iran, you weaken Russia, and you weaken China. That you're absolutely right. And give you an example. Putin pegged his war economy to the Biden $100 a barrel of oil. When Trump left, oil was under $40 a barrel. So Putin has had a windfall. Oil's going to go back below $40, and he's not going to be able to sustain his military buildup. The same applies with the Iranians, and they won't be able to fund what's left of Hezbollah and Hamas. They also won't be able to fund the Houthis. And on that note, and I've been railing against this for years, I don't think you're going to see a Houthi attack on the ships of the United States Navy without a concerted response that wrecks the infrastructure that they have. Remember, Joe Biden was responding in pinprick fashion,
Right.
hitting them early in the morning after telling them to move their people out so no one would get hurt. And he blew up a couple of empty warehouses. That's the kind of nonsense that we've had to suffer through in the last 4 years.
No, what we need more of is what Trump did with Syria after the missile attacks against their own people. And that is, we just send some drones and some missiles in there and take care of business and make sure that they can't continue to operate like that. But we don't need boots on the ground, and we don't need there's a lot of kind of traditional old school thinking about military strength that we don't even really fight that way if we were under attack now. So like, why are we using that for deterrence? Let's use what actually works for the deterrence and go from there.
Right. The other side of that, and I think it's probably the most underreported national security story of the last 8 years, was that, as you mentioned, when Syria got out of control and Putin was stretching his tentacles into that country, and he got too close to American troops, he was told by President Trump, back off. He didn't. And 300 of his little green men disappeared in a red mist. And he was in his box for the rest of the Trump administration.
Yep.
The same thing happened with the Iranians. They were sponsoring attacks on American forces in the desert. Trump told them to stop. They didn't. Then Soleimani disappeared on a Baghdad runway. And the Israelis had everything they needed to defend themselves, not the stop and start, drip, 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 restrictions on every item that we gave to them that you saw from Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
No, I think that telling them that Gaza gets carpet bombed with Trump's permission if they don't return the hostages was the only way to get the hostages back.
Stick around for more of That Kevin. Next, That Kevin Show with Kevin McCullough.